Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good buddies Richard
Hello.
and Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael like to debate and deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of a variety of topics. And this time around, it's a Mount Rushmore. You guessed it. You saw it coming, folks, of apes. Mount Rushmore of apes.
Hey, Jeff, you're the one who came up with this one, I believe.
Am I?
I think so. I'd have to go back and look at the instant replay, but I believe it was either you or Michael, but I believe it was you. So let's just say it was you.
It's not it's not a Michael Winfield joint. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I love when we do animals like horses, or whatever. And apes are, so close to humans, and they've been a lot of stories have been created around them. And I just thought it might be kind of a fun thing to approach. And a lot of times we spend time in this podcast kind of determining what the topic isn't. And I know beforehand we discussed, is it monkeys? No. Okay. No. So I just wanted to put some things out on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see them for the listeners at home. Just determine whether these are apes.
Okay.
Can you identify any what of these are?
Well, I know one of them is Gorilla Monsoon.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of them is George the Animal Steel.
Yeah. So it's an animal.
And one of them is Mac from Mac and Me. Is that the one on the bottom right?
That's right. That's Mac.
And the fourth one is a picture of a sexy lady in a sexy
it's the Halloween costume.
Sexy
no, that's a monkey costume.
Though. It's got a tail.
Costume.
So you've got 50% apes on there. I'm willing to go halvesies with a human person in the monkey costume.
Okay.
Because at least that is a human is an ape. So you got two real apes, one half ape, and then a picture of
Mac is an alien.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we've had a lot of listeners write in and say, Jeff, you don't really contribute anything to the show, and so
that's
I just
us.
want that you guys.
Michael. Yeah.
Michael Minfield has written.
Michael Minfield. Okay. Well, I guess we should get started like doing our actual choices. So without further ado, Michael, you go and start.
Okay. There's only one ape that I think really stands out as the foremost ape of all time, and that would be King Kong.
Oh, of course.
Would, also on my list.
I would consider to be a gorilla, right? I mean, I think, when he first came out, he's a gorilla-like monster, but I would assume that he's a gorilla by any other name.
Yeah.
Originally from the 1933 RKO picture film. Original character, which I think is always kind of interesting with with monsters and things that are adapted into early cinema, is they tend to come from somewhere. Frankenstein and Dracula. I guess the Creature from the Black Lagoon was kind of an original creation, but for this creature, this ape, to come out kind of whole cloth and be very come out kind of really fulfilled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very basic concept of this giant gorilla that lives on this island, and people traveling out to I can't remember if they don't really know what they're going to experience, but they come across the giant ape, and then, as you all do, you bring it back to Broadway and put it on the stage for everyone to gawk at, and ultimately die. Spoiler alert. But I think it's kind of like something that you alluded to at the top, Jeff, where King Kong has so much pathos and connective tissue to humanity that you kind of really you can feel for this giant monkey, even though it's fighting dinosaurs and abducting women like we all do. But I think it, just as a character, it is one that we are able to imprint a humanity onto it because of how similar they are to man, and just the many iterations that have happened since then. He's become even bigger and more ferocious. They've done He's just very iconic.
Mm-hmm.
To sum up King Kong.
Yeah, Richard, what was your justification?
Well, I think that he's a character that he's been able to keep the interest of the public across, going on 100 years now, in different iterations, whether it's King Kong as the climbing the Empire State Building kind of monster, or in the all the way up to the newer King Kong and Godzilla movies, where he's certainly seen as a more sympathetic character. And I think that's one of the interesting things about King Kong in general, is that even though he is this agent of chaos, who eventually is, in the original movies, climbing the Empire State Building and knocking down airplanes and causing destruction, he's also in many ways a very sympathetic character. Like, you feel sorry for him. And I know in the Peter Jackson King Kong, they really kind of anthropomorphized King Kong to maybe to my liking a little bit too much. The scene where he's skating in Central Park with Naomi Watts was a little too rom-com for me.
Hey, I got to tell you what, we're about to head up to the snow, and that was King Kong's first time seeing snow and ice and everything. And my son, who's going to be 8 years old in a couple months, he's going to go see the snow for the first time next weekend. So I expect him to act like a giant gorilla out there as well. So I'll let you know if the comparison, if he is like that in his same sense of wonder.
Right. Yeah, I just think that King Kong he's a horror, quote unquote, bad guy who you never actually feel that mad at, or you always understand why. He was just on Skull Island, just chilling, and suddenly they kidnap him and bring him to New York and put him in front of these crowds with the lights flashing and everything. What else is the big ape supposed to do?
Yeah,
he's just a big ape,
Yeah.
And I think because of that, I mean, obviously it's a metaphor originally for exploitation and sort of humans trying to triumph over nature, and the fact that maybe you never really can successfully do that. So I think it's, King Kong, beyond being just a fun character, is also a character with more depth than you would expect for just a big old 80-foot tall ape.
Yeah. I agree with all that. Yeah. The amount of humanity that Willis O'Brien put into that character, that's an example of looks fake, feels real. Like, I believe in the reality of that character. It's really there, whether it's stop motion or not. It just feels like it's like you can get so much empathy out of it. And I do think all the other horror franchises, like Frankenstein, and then all the ape films that followed, were drafting off its popularity and its idea of creating this sympathetic monster that stumbles when persecuted by civilization. So yeah, that's super cool. What a great statement.
Who is the true villain? Is it King Kong or is it all of us? Think about it. It's a think piece.
Yeah. I do have a quick mini Mount Rushmore of King Kongs within this King Kong.
Wow.
So my little mini King Kong Mount Rushmore. I do like the 2005 Andy Serkis version. What he does in a green suit with balls all over it is quite amazing. King Homer on The Simpsons on the Treehouse of Horror. King Kong, perfect. The Universal Studios ride King Kong that like blasts you with its giant banana breath as you drive by it in the tram. And then finally, Mechanic Kong from the 1967 King Kong Escapes, which is a big metal King Kong. Those are my top four.
Mechanic Kong?
Mechanic Kong. Just it's a big metal monkey.
Oh wow.
I'm sorry, ape.
Ape, thank you.
Sorry. Stay on target.
That's what the insurance company said. I had to go to him for an appraisal on my car. You can go to a couple different people, but you have to go to Mechanic Kong because he's the one that we choose.
Oh, okay.
So Richard, what's your first choice?
My
second choice.
Second choice. Yeah. My next choice is, I think if King Kong is the king of all apes, this would be the prince,
Oh.
and it's Donkey Kong.
Oh, excellent.
The character that essentially saved Nintendo, which I didn't realize this until doing a little bit of research into it. But apparently Nintendo was not doing well back in the early 80s, like late 70s, early 80s, when they were creating their video games. And they put a lot of money into Donkey Kong, and everyone assumed it was going to be a failure and was going to probably wipe out Nintendo as as a company. And it wound up being this massive, hundreds of millions of dollar hit for Nintendo. And that's kind of, in a lot of ways, it wound up helping to create the Nintendo that we know today, was the success of Donkey Kong. Again, another ape character who has had great success and evolved as apes are wont to do, has evolved throughout generations. The original Donkey Kong is still one of my favorite, call it a first gen arcade game to play. Like, I think it still like holds up as like a really fun side scroller type of arcade game. And then I find him really interesting because he's one of the few video game characters who's done a face turn over the years.
Sure.
He was the bad guy in sort of the original iterations of Donkey Kong games. And then Donkey Kong Country comes out.
Oh, hold on. Donkey Kong Jr. right away. He has been captured and has had a face turn right there.
That's true.
He becomes the you empathize with him just much like King Kong. He is now been captured by does Mario catch him then? I can't remember. Probably that villain. They do a double switch.
That's true. I had forgotten about that. I remember Donkey Kong Country later on as being the kind of big face turn, but
yeah,
you are absolutely correct. So it's just such an ubiquitous character, and now it lives on in all of the Mario games. Donkey Kong is this playable character that people love to play, whether it's in Smash Brothers or Mario Kart or whatever the game happens to be. And it's so ubiquitous. Like, we went to go see a local opera company did a production of the Magic Flute, but all of the characters were based off of 80s video game characters. And one of the characters was Donkey Kong. This was and I'm blanking on the character name, but it's the main quote unquote villain of the piece, whoever the bass plays. And the guy with the really deep voice. And he's basically playing Donkey Kong. He's got the red tie and he's a gorilla and everything else. And he's just become so ubiquitous in pop culture. I didn't see how we could talk about apes in the wide world without mentioning Donkey Kong.
I love this choice. I completely blanked on Donkey Kong and I feel ashamed for it. I do like the addition of the tie to his as if we needed to separate him from other giant apes. I mean, I guess so. Otherwise, maybe he's a King Kong type take. But the tie really humanizes him. It lets people know that he's got some work to do.
Yeah,
like this isn't fun for him. This is like, I got to put on my tie and get to work, just like Superman.
Dress for the job you want. If you want to manage the barrel rolling department. Was it was it a language mistranslation to call him? Because I know what he has done is he's transgressed the idea that he's an ape with the first name Donkey.
I believe he was originally supposed to be called Monkey Kong, and the King Kong lawyers, or as the last time I read anything about him, that's what I remember. He was like called Monkey Kong, and they're like, "That's that."
Well, according to the Wikipedia, his creator Shigeru Miyamoto named him Donkey Kong because donkey conveyed stubborn and Kong implied gorilla.
Then maybe I'm totally wrong. Not the first time.
Although Universal did try to sue Nintendo in 1982, saying that they had overstepped the copyright laws. But it turns out that a lawyer found out that Universal had won a lawsuit back in 1979 by claiming that King Kong was in the public domain.
Oh.
Oops. So that was a legal oops on Universal's part.
Okay, cool. So, did you hear anything?
What?
Trying to play this link that Michael shared.
No, I couldn't hear it.
No, I figured if I can get it up. But okay, Michael, what's your second choice?
Well, the realm of apes really fell into 3 categories, so that gave me a nice structure on how I can start thinking about these apes. My next one is an orangutan, and that is King Louie from the 1967 Jungle Book. Perennial favorite, this movie of mine and my son's, at least when he was a lot younger. Voiced by Louis Prima, and was not like was an original character for the movie. Wasn't in the Rudyard Kipling stories of Mowgli and all of the different animals back in the day. But I guess originally Bill Peet, who was the kind of the animator and kind of the original story driver for the Jungle Book, he wanted to have like kind of a giant monkey person, but left the project in and around the same time that they kind of didn't want to go with just kind of a more angry ape. They wanted something to be a little sillier and to kind of play against the Phil Harris kind of his singing ability. And so they brought in Louis Prima. Originally they wanted Louis Armstrong, but we're kind of afraid of the African American playing an ape sort of trope thing, and brought in another guy named Louis, who sang jazz and scat and whatever. And he is just this he's just wonderfully insane king of the monkeys and other apes characters in the story. Sings a really silly song, but also has like this wild side where he can like be silly and kind of friendly and swing angry. And I think that really speaks to a lot of what like apes tend to be. Humans think so much of apes as these things that are, these chimpanzees are cute and cuddly, and look at Bubbles the chimp and all this different stuff, and then suddenly they like will start biting your face off. And like I don't think orangutans are like that in general. They tend to be like the most chill of all of the apes. They are particularly just like whatever. They kind of hang out all day. But I do like that kind of ferocity of the ape that kind of can be triggered, that can go from like a docile creature to suddenly, this thing is 10 times stronger than you, no matter what its size. It can be a chimpanzee, it can be a gorilla or a orangutan, and it's just going to be stronger than you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and you see that in the live action one that they did back in what was 2016 or whatever. The one with Christopher Walken plays King Louie, where they turned him into a Gigantopithecus, this like ancient, prehistoric, giant ape. And they made him certainly a lot less fun, good times Louis Prima, and a little bit more Christopher Walken menacing.
Yeah, he's very menacing, very much like a mob boss that rather than insane orangutan.
Yeah, and then of course there is the character. Is Louis from Tailspin essentially King Louis?
Yes. Oh. Yeah. Oh, the Tailspin series is like basically they just all those people were Jungle Book type characters.
Yeah, because they never actually call him King Louis, so I wasn't sure if he'd been deposed or if there was some sort of what exactly was going on there. But yeah, I mean, again, another character that is transcended, not just his initial appearance in pop culture, but has had legs, so to speak.
Yeah.
What a fun. I remember as a kid, as an adult, realizing that these were all like, well, maybe not Phil Harris, but these were all kind of like older jazz singers, like if you were they all probably worked lounges in Vegas, all of the characters in this film. So that was a fun thing. All his mentors for Mowgli, all representing different aspects of just a lethargy or like partying and getting, having fun, yeah. What a fun choice. Okay. Richard, what's your next one?
All right. My third choice is Clyde from the Clint Eastwood movies. Every Which Way But Loose and Any Which Way You Can. I mean, what a fun character. I mean, someone who practically acted Clint Eastwood off of the screen in his 2 appearances. I would say probably, I'm not sure that he was the first orangutan to make it big on the big or small screen, but it certainly kicked off an era of orangutans on film and television. He smokes cigarettes, he drinks beer, he gets into fights, he drives trucks. What can the orangutan not do? And I remember this was a movie that would come on our local independent TV station quite a bit when I was growing up. And I, as a kid, I just loved it because I loved animals. There's an orangutan doing human stuff, and how cool is that? And that's one of the things that we love about ape movies a lot of the times is the more human the ape is, the better.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to pose a question to you.
Yeah.
Who would win in a truck driving arm wrestling match? Is it Clyde, the orangutan, or is it the other gigantic ape of our time, arm wrestler Sylvester Stallone as Hawk or Hawks?
Tony Hawks.
No, whatever his name is. In Over the Top.
Well,
it's for all the bananas.
I think it's tough because I think Sylvester Stallone is a better truck driver.
Oh,
although I think that Clyde's arm length would be more of an advantage because Stallone's got stubby arms.
Well, I do like that this is potentially like a triathlon of a competition. It is truck driving,
right?
And then it is an arm wrestling thing, and then maybe chasing after your estranged son on the highway. So I don't know if Clyde had a son that he needed to like flag down and reassure that everything was okay. But
yeah, that was the third movie that they never got made, which actually wound up becoming the original script for Over the Top. Yeah, I would say I would give the edge to Clyde just because obviously truck driving's not that hard. If Sylvester Stallone's like 10-year-old kid could do it.
Good point.
So I'm going to go with Clyde on this one. But I just have a soft spot for Clyde. I also appreciate that he's enough of a pop culture legend that they can feature him in Shaun of the Dead with him doing the impression of Clyde, the orangutan, and everybody knows exactly what he's doing. So
that's an interesting diversion for think of Clint Eastwood and how the parts of his career that he played the nihilistic cop, like if Charles Bronson had done a buddy picture with a monkey, would his career have gone differently? Because I think they did the monosyllabic kind of nihilistic action hero thing, the both of them,
right?
But
only Eastwood was willing to debase himself.
Yeah.
As a truck driver up against an orangutan.
Yeah.
Well, I know that before the show started, we were kind of talking about Gene Hackman a bit, and I wonder if he was cast as the orangutan in Any Which Way But Loose, if he would have done as good a job as Clyde. I don't know. Yeah. Gene Hackman could do everything, so maybe he could have done. Put a wig on him,
Yeah, right, I mean, yeah. Go ahead. I'm done.
Michael, what's your third one?
My third one. Let's move along. My third one is a chimpanzee choice, and it is Ham, the first chimp in space.
Oh,
Ah,
wow.
nice.
Ham, also known as chimp number 65, and was named after the Holloman Aerospace Medical Center in New Mexico.
Wow.
He went into space on January 31st, 1961. He flew up there. They kind of pushed a bunch of buttons, or things kind of went up automatically. You know, at the time, we were trying to beat the Russians into space, and they were sending all sorts of animals up there. They sent mice, and so would we. They sent, Laika, the first dog in space. All these just shooting animals up into space all the time. You know, they try to get them up with trampolines, a long ladder, everything to get these things into
Whoa.
space.
Whether we can get them back or not, that's kind of don't ask questions about that.
Yeah. But he went up and came back and had good health and lived another 20 something years. 22 years. He eventually died of heart disease and liver disease. But I mean, who amongst us aren't going to die of heart disease and liver disease after another 20 years on this planet? But these creatures that we treat with such sometimes like flippancy, right? They're tested upon, they're dissected, they are given experimental drugs, they're all these things that are done in the name of science. But you put like a monkey or put in a chimpanzee in a spacesuit, and like the rest of the stuff we're talking about, it really humanizes them. It is like, okay, well, a human will eventually be in a spacesuit, be locked into this tin, capsule and rocketed into space and have to punch a bunch of levers, and hopefully they come back down. And I don't know. I think chimpanzees in space are just wonderful. And glad that like the first one that went up actually survived it instead of. I mean, maybe he didn't. Maybe there's another another Simpsons references, the monkeys that came back from space and they came back super smart and all this stuff. But I imagine that there were other chimpanzees that weren't as successful, but happy that the first one that went up lived for another 26 years.
That's really cool.
That chimp got all the city after he retired.
You imagine just like all the other chimps just rolling their eyes. Ugh, here comes Ham. Ugh.
Exactly. Ham. Literally a ham.
Yeah. Just comes around bragging. Have you been to space? No.
Okay. No. I guess we got to salute.
Exactly.
What a jerk. Okay, next up, Richard, what do you got?
Last choice is the main villain from the Powerpuff Girls, Mojo Jojo.
Oh, wow.
Originally, that is wild. That leads into my last choice too. But go ahead, and I'll.
Oh, that's incredible! That if we are able to stack choices on top of choices here. So Mojo Jojo was originally a Professor Utonium's lab assistant named Jojo, who was a good lab assistant but a little rambunctious, and accidentally knocked the professor into a vat or into a beaker of chemical X while he was creating the Powerpuff Girls, which gave them their secret powers or their special powers. And also he was infected by it and caused his brain to grow like 2 times normal size and pop out. And the professor, and always remember, the professor in Powerpuff Girls is kind of a jerk, winds up basically forgetting about Jojo, and because he's got his new daughters to take care of, and so he just spends all his time doting on them and doesn't pay any attention to Jojo, who eventually gets hurt and runs off and lives out in the streets, eventually becoming the supervillain Mojo Jojo. And it's just a wild, great backstory. And he is the primary villain of Powerpuff Girls, which was a show that I watched way too much of in college. It's one of those great Cartoon Network shows where you're not quite sure if the target audience is 8-year-old girls or drunk or stoned 20-year-old college students. Could have been either one. And he's just this great sort of like very intelligent, very much wants to take over the world, has a very unique way of speaking, was central to my favorite Powerpuff Girls episode of all time, the Beat Alls, where the four of the main villains team up to become a superhero, a supervillain supergroup, basically, very much mimicking the Beatles. Until he winds up falling in love with a female monkey, who's basically Yoko, and winds up breaking up the group. Powerpuff Girls, like I said, were something that I watched a ton of growing up. Mojo was certainly a huge part of that. And I just wanted to give some love to not Adult Swim, because this was not Adult Swim. This was the pre-Adult Swim Cartoon Network, blurring the lines between cartoons for children and cartoons for adults.
It's a fun choice. Mojo Jojo. I love it. Okay, what was yours threading into this, Michael?
Okay, so my last choice is a comic book character, a villain to the Image Comics character named the Savage Dragon. And the Savage Dragon was created by a comic book artist and eventual writer, Eric Larson, who he'd created, but like when he was a teenager, and then had like these stacks and stacks and stacks of ideas and nonsense characters that he'd kind of saved until he was like into his 30s, maybe into his 40s. When a bunch of artists left Marvel Comics in like the early 90s and formed Image Comics, he kind of brought his ideas in there. So the Savage Dragon was this big green hulking character with this big green fin on his head, and this guy with this no memory, yada yada yada. He's super strong. Yeah. One of his bad guys was a villain named Brainy Ape, Brani Ape. Now, Brainy Ape was a giant gorilla with a glass dome on his head with a brain inside. And he had like these, tremendous super strength, and he had great mental capabilities, able to move things with his mind. But the thing about Brainy Ape that was revealed after, I don't know how many issues or whatever, was that the brain inside Brainy Ape was actually Adolf Hitler's brain.
Oh,
bum, bum, bum.
Oh, no.
So after Adolf Hitler had faked his death back in 1945, he had somehow been able to survive in these number of different bodies, and one of them was this giant gorilla body. And somehow along the line, he had learned psychic powers and all the stuff being experimented on. I love that you chose Mojo Jojo, Richard, and that it's an ape with a giant exposed brain, and that my last choice was an ape with a giant exposed brain. And my last thing, he's pretty forgettable as a character. But a long time ago, maybe in 2001 or 2000 sometime, I went down to the San Diego Comic-Con, and I saw Eric Larson signing. There we go. Look at that. Oh, look at that villainous ape. Look at that awful Hitler. And I asked Eric Larson to draw me a picture of Adolf Hitler's brain. And I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I'll put it in the chat. Maybe, Jeff, you can throw it up there.
Okay.
But it is Adolf Hitler's brain sitting on like a jail cell bench sort of thing. And it is one of my I don't know where if I still have the drawing. Maybe I do somewhere, but what a horror.
Does the brain have a little Hitler mustache on the bottom of the cerebellum?
It doesn't. It just has these little like weird brain stem things that it can kind of walk on. It's horrible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny that's kind of a full circle too thing. Back to our first choices. Was Adolf Hitler put in an ape because Adolf Hitler loved King Kong? Supposedly, the film.
It's a very good question. I don't know.
I wonder if that was the choice. Are you hearing? I tried to put a song. I'm trying to play a song, but I haven't. Play it. Okay.
Could you sing it? Can you just sing it, Jeff? That'd be even more nice.
Michael sent me a cool in chat beforehand, the Gorilla by The Ideal. So we'll try to put that as our walkout music. Oh, that could be our underscore music for the choice, for the choosing of the top four. So for the top four, let's go with King Kong, since we know him, we love him. Let's go with Donkey Kong because he's a classic. And how about Ham, because he gave his life for space travel. And then I'll just think Clyde because the guy was awesome. So cool. Yeah. We're back, guys. We did an episode.
Surprised nobody chose gorillas as the Bane. Just thought about that one. Wouldn't have made my top four, but worth a shout out.
Yeah. That would have been a good choice. Okay. Hey, this has been the Mount Rushmore of Apes. I'm always Jeff.
I'm Richard.
Thank